You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today, we welcome back to the program two terrific guests to talk about their continuing photo projects centered on life along the U.S.-Mexican border. And in case you're wondering, for today's episode, we are using Audio-Technica microphones. We want to thank AT for supporting the B&H Photography Podcast. Now, despite sharing similar subject matter, the work of Greg Constantine and Monica Lozano could not be more different in style. Greg joined us on the podcast back in 2018 talking about his photo projects on refugees and stateless people in Asia. Monica, who lives in El Paso, joined us in 2019 along with photographer Stefan Falk. If you missed this episode, please go back and listen to it. You will not be disappointed. Today, they're here to update us on their individual projects and share their insight on what they know from living and working at the U.S.-Mexican border and in and around the migrants, the asylum seekers, the detention centers, and the camps. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for joining us again.
That's great to be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you guys back here. Great to hear your voices again. Let's start with Monica. Monica was born in Texas and grew up in both Texas and Mexico. She's the recipient of numerous prizes and recognitions for her work and has published several books, including 2021's Two Sides of the Border. Monica joined us in October 2019, and we discussed many topics, including her series, What Remains, which are still life photos of the few items carried in the bags of refugees at the border, basic clothes, paperwork, baby dolls. I was particularly touched by this series of images. They're truly heartbreaking and extremely insightful, and it was a way of looking at this situation from a point of view that nobody else ever touched before, and it spoke volumes. Now, the series you worked on since What Remains is called The Camps, and it has a much more documentary feel. Can you summarize the work that you've been doing since we last spoke back in 2019?
Yes. After What Remains, what happened is that the asylum places were full. So people started to create these camps outside of the port of entry to the U.S., which were 3 bridges in Juarez. So, yes, it was actually pretty devastating to see, people had to create these camps. They were living there. Families, kids, and yes, I felt all of a sudden, in the city I grew up in Juarez, had become something, the center of this humanitarian crisis. So yeah, I could not, not go and see what was happening and document all of this.
Do you work with organizations to get access? I mean, how exactly are you getting in there?
Well, actually, Alan, what happened is that these are parks, public parks with no security, nothing. It's just outside of the port of entry. And there is no guards, no, it's just the tents and the people taking the space to live there in order to, they get on a list and wait to have a date and a scheduled meeting, with the border. And this is what happens. I actually just grabbed my old backpack, wore, some low profile clothing, and I just walked in there.
Who maintains the peace here, if I may ask? Because is there any kind of organized, security, for lack of better words? I mean, who's making sure that things stay under control? Because I could see situations like this get out of hand very, very quickly because you have a lot of people who don't know each other being forced into tight quarters.
So most of the people camping were families, and it was actually people from different states of Mexico or even Latin America, of South America. They were actually very, organized. They had daily meetings at 12. They shared things. Much of the people in El Paso and in Juarez were donating things because this happened during the winter. So the winter can get a little rough in the desert, and to see the families camping there, there were a lot of donations and people trying to help. But these people were on their own. They were not aligned with any organization or anything. They were actually kind of taking matters into their hands to make things happen, because a lot of the process in Mexico got blocked. So this is why they were outside of the bridge asking for asylum directly. And honestly, it was pretty peaceful to see.
So in other words, there was a lot of mutual respect among the people. Everybody basically said, "Okay, we're in this together. We have to work together," that's good to hear.
Very much.
In the time that we're talking, a year and a half now, or when you started working on the project, how large did the camps grow? How big did they grow? Can you kind of put an estimate on? Did they double in size, etc.?
Yes. First, it started with one bridge, and then 3 of the bridges. So it was kind of 3 parks, and I can say around 200 people on each of the bridges. But it was pretty amazing to see, especially what just mentioned, how to see how the people were organized and how they shared the food. And if somebody had their meeting, their scheduled meeting with the border, they left their tent to the new family that was coming in. So they were sharing the stuff, and they were, very much united.
But there was kind of a cycle of people, like you would see people coming and going,
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of your work process and your workflow, how often would you go down? Would you go down early in the morning and just spend a day walking and talking, taking pictures? The work that you're showing, is a lot about the physical structures of the camps and the beautiful light as it hits in these odd places. How long until you kind of settled on the type of photos you wanted to take and the stories you wanted to tell?
Yeah, I usually went in the morning and just walked in there, did not take my camera out at first, just started to talk to people, hear the stories, and eventually I asked for permission, to people that I saw wanted to talk about their story, and eventually I took out the camera, and I was very interested in not showing their face, so they were still protected, but showing this reality through the objects,
right.
Which were so intimate. And I at some point I felt I was not in Juarez anymore. I was in this unknown space of war crisis, humanitarian crisis, and saw children playing in the mud and eating out of holes in the ground, and
right.
It was just pretty shocking.
And this is your home too, or this is one of the places you grew up, so you know it very well.
I grew up in here. Yes.
Is the idea of bearing witness and being there really important part of this aspect of the project?
Yes, what the intention usually, or the projects before, I am very attracted to the face, to the eyes, and how you can tell a story through a face. But on this time, this humanitarian crisis got out of hand, and I really wanted to talk about these stories without putting them in danger.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your new book as well.
Yes, this was a collaboration with the Mexican architect Tatiana Bilbao.
Mm-hmm.
She's actually a teacher in Yale University. She's been doing this research about the 2 sides of the border, and she invited me to collaborate with pictures from the What Remains series.
If I could just roll the tape back a little bit, we were talking about how things had changed from the time you started shooting there till now. And one of the things we didn't mention was COVID, which had to have a huge impact on the camps. How is it dealt with? I imagine people were getting it being in such close proximity. And was any were any agencies helping you with this?
What happened with the camps in 2020 is that they vanished. They were taken out through the government, so they're no longer there. And what happens is that there's these filter hotels where immigrants are coming in once they arrive to the border. They are there, they're tested for COVID. They are given basically the asylum space for them to just arrive, right? And to see what is going to happen with them. And COVID definitely impacted the situation in two ways. I think first, of course, the fear of the journey and the traveling stopped many families. And secondly, there was, I feel, momentum that was happening with all this crisis, this humanitarian crisis. And COVID came in and then, pushed it away. Like, this is no longer happening. Now we are with COVID, and this is a reality with the pandemic. So the stories and everything about immigration kind of got shut down. It wasn't being spoken about anymore, but the situation was still there. It did lower, but now it's being filtered in a new way, at least in Juarez, in the border.
And when you say when the camps were removed, that was the Mexican government that came in to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And
yes.
And the hotels that you're describing were they existing structures that were kind of used for a different purpose, or they were built for this purpose?
No, they were built hotels that were, given to different organizations to give a space for people to come in. And if they were positive in COVID, they were they're quarantined. They were separated from everybody else. And this is the hotel, Filter Hotel, who I have been working with now. I go there twice a month. And although I have not been able to take any more photographs, I help with donations for now, just to help out.
And you're not taking photos because it's just you're not ready for that project, or they just ask you not to take photos inside, or?
Yes, we cannot go inside. And I also have my two boys at home. I have to take care of, my family. And since April 2020, I haven't been able to work photographing in the border, but I have been able to, I'm actually working now with the University of Colorado in Boulder, with the Crown Institute, and we are doing ethnographic photography with Latinx community immigrants who are now in the U.S. And we're doing testimonials for the educational system in Colorado, which is very important to see acts of trust and distrust inside of the educational system. And this is, of course, to propose eventually new ways, new dynamics to go against, inequality, discrimination, and all of these issues that I'm actually taking photos and helping the students take photos to do their testimony. So it's wonderful. Kind of like research through ethnographic photography, which is, amazing. And it definitely goes hand by hand with my work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering maybe Greg could chime in a little bit on the question that Alan had regarding COVID. I mean, I know we're going to get to some of your work in more detail, but, in working in and around detention centers and on the U.S. side, what was the experience that you had regarding COVID and the protocols?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, a lot of the situation, at least for my project in detention, was 2020 was a year of not taking many pictures, but at the same time, it was a time of doing an incredible amount of work that helped filter into the project. So a lot of the, in terms of COVID and detention centers across the U.S., I mean, in so many ways, these detention centers became somewhat of a kind of a black hole for people. But I think that that's one of the project. That's probably one of the tragic parts of the past year, at least in dealing with immigration detention, is that a lot of people just their access, like Monica was talking about in terms of the situation in camps along the border, at least in the detention centers, they basically just became locked off, meaning that visitation programs that had visitors going in and visiting people who were in detention centers pretty much ground to a halt, and they haven't been able to restart their projects. Immigration lawyers who have been going and visiting people in detention centers had to stop their visitations of people, of their clients in detention centers. I think it had a really big impact on everything. And I mean, from a photographer's point of view, I mean, 2020 was a really challenging year, but at the same time, at least for this particular project, it ended up just miraculously opening up this space to be able to do a ton of work with the work that had already been done and expanding upon it in ways that I would never had to have been able to do before, because I'd be on the road so much,
Right. And having gone through the Seven Doors site and seeing, what effort is there, it's kind of clear, it's right there. So I definitely want to get to talk about more of that in a bit. But Monica, maybe same question for you in the sense, what have you been doing in terms of organizing? I mean, I know you have some exhibits coming up and you're doing this work in Colorado. And
well, I've been like Greg, taking the time to really look at the work that was created. And it is also, a breather to be able to have this time and revisit and see, because there is so much material and so many stories to talk about.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we come back. We're going to be speaking with Greg Constantine about some of the work that he's been doing as of late. Stay tuned. This episode of the B&H Photography Podcast is produced using Audio-Technica microphones. Check the link in our show notes for the Audio-Technica product page on the B&H website. Okay, we are back. Greg Constantine, who lives in British Columbia, is a documentary photographer working primarily in black and white. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Newsweek, The Economist, and many other publications. He has also created the wonderful journal Seven Doors, which he's going to tell us more about soon. Greg joined us originally back in May of 2018 to discuss his project Nowhere People, about communities of stateless people and refugees in Asia. Now, when you were with us back in 2018, you had just returned to North America after living and working in Asia for years, and you turned your attention to the immigrant detention centers we have in the U.S. Tell us a little bit about, where you've been and how things have gone since you've returned and since our last visit with you here.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks, John and Alan. It's been a really intense couple of years. When we talked last, I was just the very beginning of working on the project here in the United States. And 2018 and 19 ended up just being some really pretty intense years. I think I logged in about 20,000 miles on the car, made about 6 different really long road trips through the entire West Coast, southern border, and multiple trips along that trajectory, but also multiple trips across the Midwest in the interior of the country. So a lot of the work was really focused on the impact that ICE raids and detention were having on individuals and communities, both along the border, but also in the interior of the country. So it was really eye-opening for me, and it was a real kind of eye-opener in the sense that as I was along this trajectory of traveling and meeting with people and hearing their stories about what happened to them while they were in immigration detention, it was also this kind of creating images that could then establish almost like this architecture, a visual architecture of what the immigration detention system looked like all across the U.S. This vast network of over 200 different sites, whether they're large, huge immigration prisons or smaller sites all across the U.S. I mean, I think a lot of people are aware that there's immigration detention centers across the country, but I don't think people really have a really good frame of reference as to just the scale and scope of it. And that's really where a lot of my attention was placed over, since we talked last. And it's now developed into 3 really extensive kind of photo testimonial essays that kind of try to approach this big monolithic detention system in the U.S. from a variety of different kind of perspectives and dimensions. And it's been a really eye-opening, humbling, depressing, but incredibly inspiring project to work on, in the sense that the people who I've met with and who I've interviewed, who have gone through, more than what anybody can even imagine. Just how incredibly inspiring they are, and their stories are.
Now, how many facilities were you able to visit, and how many were you able to get inside, and what was that that process like?
I think in total, there was, I think, over 25 different major detention centers all across the West Coast and the southern border, and also 2 on the East Coast. Those were, and to be very frank, I didn't get access to any of them. They were impossible to get access to. But that was never really kind of the intention or objective for the project and for what kind of images I wanted to create. But so there was about 25 major detention centers along the borders. And then the work that I did in the U.S., in the interior of the country, there aren't very many huge, massive detention centers like you would find in California or Texas or Arizona or in New Mexico. In the Midwest, what the apparatus that is used by ICE to actually detain people are county jails all across the Midwest. So you have small, tiny little county jails that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue from Department of Homeland Security for renting out bed space for ICE to detain people. And so I traveled across, I think it would have been 14 different states all across the U.S. and went to all these different county jails. And I think there was about 35 of them through, it could be Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, Washington State. I mean, all of these places are are sites where immigrants are being detained for ICE, but they're being detained in these small to medium size, and some of them are large county jails.
And my memory of our last conversation, you tend to work, it seems like you kind of work on your own, right? I mean, I don't know if you have a partner in this, but the amount of effort that goes into it is admirable, to say the least. Is that how it's been for the past 3 years? Are you kind of doing the research, the reporting, the writing? Are you out there just doing this on your own, pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, all the work is funded through grants from foundations and fellowships that I've secured, which has been fantastic because it gives me the autonomy.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm thinking back to a comment we had after the last conversation from a listener who said, "Oh, I really enjoyed the whole talk, but could you please do a whole talk on grant applications for for these kind of projects?" Yeah. So while we're here, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that and the amount of time and effort, or do you have good contacts at organizations that know your work?
Yeah, I mean, it took years to kind of network into the larger institutional foundations who have provided me with the support. And, and then it comes into just the grueling hours of writing up proposals and coming up with different creative ideas for how the work could be funneled into different conversations. And so a huge amount of time is always spent on trying to network with new people and new institutions that would fund the project, because it's not coming from the photography world, the funding isn't, and it's not coming from the journalism world. So I'm having to be really creative in terms of how I'm approaching the funding that I get. And it consumes a huge amount of time, but at the end of the day, it gives me the total authorship and freedom to work on my own pace. I do like to work on a very slow pace. But it's just that sense of authorship of knowing that, you can package up and present the work in any number of different kind of creative ways without having somebody putting constraints or restraining you on what you're doing. So,
And that's one of the things I think is really unique about it, Seven Doors specifically. It's comprehensive. It comes from many angles. You have statistics, and it's all backed up with good, reporting, but also good photography. And to get all those aspects together in one place is very impressive.
Thanks. I mean, it's really been having lived abroad and worked in Asia or internationally for over a decade. Coming back to the U.S. and working on this project has been it's been, I think, probably one of the most, if not the most important project that I've ever worked on, and trying to find all the different kind of creative ways in which the work can get out there to people, whether it's through the website or through the journal or through, a series of pop-up exhibitions that will hopefully happen later on this year because of COVID kind of put a hold on that. But, it's really kind of working autonomously. And I have my partner, she really has played a huge important role in doing a lot of the research for me and for the project. It's been an amazing project to work on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm looking here at some of the video that you're now incorporating, some really beautiful black and white video. Can you talk about that? Maybe working more in video for this project and what gear you used?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the video was all done on an iPhone, and it was all kind of secondary. I mean, it's all there really to kind of help complement the kind of this sense of isolation and desolation that the still photographs are there to were made for. So I'm still using film quite a lot with all of this, and the video is something that it's a language that I still don't feel like I'm very fluent in, but it's something that I've been playing around with a little bit more. But gear-wise, it's just very straightforward on an iPhone.
Okay. And your film cameras are what now?
Yeah, so for most of the landscape work, I was using the Fuji GX617, the panoramic, which I absolutely fell in love with. For a lot of the work in the Midwest with the County Jail series, I wanted it to take a very kind of different aesthetic. So I started using a Mamiya 6 to take those photographs, which none of that work has been released yet. That'll be released probably in June of this year. And then just last year, I ended up buying a Vista 4x5 that I'm hoping to be able to include as time goes by in the project as well. So,
for each chapter, you're putting out a print. What do you want to call them? A magazine, really, I suppose. Is that continuing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that it will continue. COVID has really, like everybody, it's caused everybody to kind of adjust and have to pivot. I mean, the next issue number 3 will be released online here within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The 4th issue of the journal, which will be the 2nd chapter of the U.S. work, will come out probably in June. Those will be available online first, and then depending on how things open up, then I'll pivot back to the print publications and go from there. So,
are you using your grant money to do this, or are you raising funds from other places, or just out of your own pocket to print up whatever volumes you're printing?
Yeah, I mean, the journals were printed through the grant funding that I had. I printed them at a place in Bangkok, which is where I used to live. And at least like for the 2nd issue, which was the first part of the U.S. work. I mean, the great thing about it, I printed 1,000 copies, and the relationships that I'd made with different organizations in the U.S. Who were all dealing with immigration issues and specifically with immigration detention, several hundred copies. I think of that 2nd journal, there was about 600 of the 1,000 copies were pretty much provided at no cost to different organizations, whether they're larger national organizations or small grassroots organizations, who then were kind of the distribution method in terms of disseminating it to different kind of people, whether they be immigration lawyers or activists or whatever. So it was just a whole different kind of tactic in terms of how to get the work out there, because it's a lot of work that I think, or I've found, it's just so challenging for any traditional publication, whether it be a magazine, newspaper, online site, to kind of publish in the way that I have always envisioned it to. So that goes back to that, just having this sense of authorship over the work. And the journal has provided this really amazing kind of outlet to get the work out there, and the voices is more importantly, in the way that I think that they demand to.
I think it's also a good idea that you're doing something other than electronic and just being online. It is just so easy to just look at the best photographs online and just flip right onto the next image. It's just, I think, the Instagram mentality that we have, we're just flipping through one picture after the other, and it doesn't matter how amazing. So you might spend 5 seconds on an amazing picture and just 2.5 on everything else. As soon as you have something that is physical and tactical, and you could hold and go through it and dwell on it, and it doesn't go off when you hit a switch. It does not need electricity to work. It's always there. And even though a lot of people thought that print was kind of like dead, they've been talking about this for decades, it seems to be that there's a really resurgence of less but better quality print work. And I know that when I get a book in the mail, and we get a certain amount of books delivered regularly to us because of what we do, I find myself taking books and printed matter a lot more seriously, and I spend a lot more time on it. That's just my take on it. So I think that's a good direction to do. And that could be for anybody who's working on any project of any consequence. If you want people to see it, at some point, I think it pays to have something that they could take away and hold and dwell on.
I couldn't agree with you more, Alan. I mean, I think that there is nothing wrong with providing something that forces people to slow down today. And I think a print form, exhibition form, is something that really accomplishes that. Now, you may not reach the widest audience possible, but I kind of feel like, and I've always believed that by slowing people down and kind of pulling them into this really kind of intimate space with something that's on paper or something that's on a wall, then produces, I think, just a much more kind of deeper, more meaningful kind of interaction that they have with the work and the people who are in the work and the voices that are in the work and everything. And I think Monica would probably agree with that, in the sense of, just having your work presented in a book form just really makes a huge difference in terms of how people are engaging with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you've created is something that you would think almost any newspaper or organization, they would spend a year or more with a team of people to put together these features with all this information, including photos. Has anybody approached you to say, hey, we want to include parts of this or this whole thing as it is? Or is it just that, the ecosystem that you're in is so separate from the traditional press that's not happening, that conversation's not happening at all?
I mean, I think it crosses both, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the ecosystem and the way that I work is somewhat detached from things. I think that, the work that I've been producing for this particular project doesn't particularly or automatically fit into the breaking news cycle.
No, but I could see it being like a multi-part series, on a Sunday paper.
So do I, John. But I don't think. But it's amazing. Right. I really do believe that. But unfortunately, the reality of it is that as many times as you share work with editors and stuff, it either fits or it doesn't, and you either get responses back or you don't. And at least with this particular project, I'd say that that's probably been one of the more frustrating sides of it. But also at the same time, I refuse to kind of let it hold me back from recognizing the importance of it. And the fact is that, yeah, would it be great to have a big, huge online feature of the work on a website on a newspaper's website? Absolutely. But also at the same time, I think that I can get much more reward, and the work can resonate with people just as much by having a pop-up exhibition in a small town in Texas or in Arizona or in Illinois, by capturing the attention of 200 people who show up and doing it over and over and over again. So
Right. Yeah, no, again, I hear you. I mean, and it's admirable for sure. And like you say, you're not going to sit around and wait for an editor to give you approval. You're going to go out and do the work. So it's just great. I wanted to maybe throw the same question to Monica, or a version of it. I mean, have you had experiences where you're trying to find your work a home, maybe not necessarily in the artistic space, but in the press and the journalistic space, and had problems because it just doesn't fit a mold?
Yes, John, the thing I feel is that a lot of us don't want to see reality, don't want to see certain pictures. It's difficult themes to be talking about. So many of us prefer to close the eyes, and not see. So yes, it's definitely hard. I am surprised, though, that I have been invited by a publisher in LA to do something, to do a book, which was a huge surprise for me because, like Greg says, it is very hard to get out there in the publishing world. I'm still thinking about what story to tell and how. I really want to be careful to take the best shot, with this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Both of you have been working on these projects for several years, and you've seen the situation evolve and devolve depending on times and what was going on. And it's been a roller coaster in many, many ways, politically, with pandemics, with everything else. Do you feel defeated, or do you feel okay that this is ultimately going to be resolved? And not for everybody, obviously. That's impossible. But on the whole, the people that you're documenting, do you think most of them will be able to make it and be able to make it well?
To answer your question, Alan, I've never been in this spot that I am right now, where I kind of lost faith in humanity, if I can say it in one way.
That's a good way of putting it. Sure.
Yeah, for all the things that I've seen in the border, especially with the kids, who are the new generations and who are the most vulnerable in all of this, and who are being stripped and broken and just into the raw of the capabilities of a system. And I'm at a point right now, to be honest, where I have lost, the hope, and I don't know how to even recover it for myself, for my own sake. But yeah, what I saw in 2019 in the border definitely put me in a spot that I had never been before.
Monica, do you think that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think that hope, you can find that hope with your work through photography? I mean, is that your goal for 2021, if possible, or do you just feel that that's not okay?
Yes, John. Yes, and thank you for giving me that.
Thank you, John, for asking that, because we needed that uptick there.
No, but I mean, but it's true. There are ways to to get out of and art, photography, and work are some of them.
Completely, John.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Photography plays a huge role. And this is why the work in Colorado is so important for me right now, because I'm not only photographing the stories anymore that are happening through the border, but I am actually working with an investigation, for proposing new dynamics for breaking borders inside of the U.S., of all the borders of that I mentioned before, of inequality, of discrimination, of invalidation, of all of this. This is why the work right now, it is actually giving me hope, and it is through photography that we're observing all of this reality. So yeah.
No, well, I appreciate your honesty on that too, though, because we know how hard 2019 was in terms of the immigrant crisis, the migrant crisis, asylum seeker crisis, and of course then COVID comes and makes it doubly hard. And maybe Greg, you could answer that same question with Alan, because you've seen a lot and you see it from the institutional side here and some of the responses. What's your thoughts for the immediate future and the not too distant future?
I guess that for me, it's that there are policies and the ethos of the system in the U.S. is so entrenched that, and so wrapped into corporate interests and everything that you don't particularly really see things changing in the short term. But the reality of it is that, I think I kind of go back to what Monica said, is that, I've now revisited this work with a whole new kind of fresh set of eyes. And over the past year, without being able to take pictures, I've just been interviewing just people nonstop. And this could be people who were deported to Liberia, or talking with people on WhatsApp who were deported from the U.S. to Cameroon, or to dozens of countries around the world, Somalia, Sierra Leone. I mean, I've been just doing interviews after interviews after interviews. And one of the things that has been really become clear to me is that, at least the body of work that I've created, it fits in really importantly to a broader kind of conversation that other photographers, I think, are going to be making in the years to come. I'm really excited about what the work I hope can accomplish. But at the same time, you try to find your little niche as to what your work can do and how it can contribute. And you put all your efforts into it, knowing that there's a dozen other photographers and artists, whether they're writers or photographers or video, filmmakers, all working in one capacity, creating another little slice of a bigger picture that you hope that you want to be a part of. And I really feel like there's going to be a really important conversation taking place about immigration in the coming year and over the next 2 years with this current administration as well. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. So.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end of another show. An hour has gone by, and we could talk on forever, but time is an issue. Greg, if people would like to catch up on more of your work, where can they go to?
Yeah, they can go to the Seven Doors website, which is www.7doors.org, or also the project Instagram site, which is Immigration Detention. And just follow. There'll be a lot of work coming out and being released over the next few months. And a lot of the organizations who have, supported me, whether it be the Oak Foundation or Open Society Foundations, Sigrid Rousing Trust, Neo Philanthropy, I really appreciate all of their support over the past 2 years and helping to make this project come to life and support me along the way.
Great. That's terrific.
And if people wanted to get a hold of the Seven Doors magazine or the print publication that you put out, is that possible?
Yeah, they're both. If you go to the website, they're both available for purchase on the website. And more will be coming out. You can see them. I'm publishing. They're digital versions of them done through Issue, but also at the same time, there's multilingual versions. So the first issue, which was on Malaysia, is now translated into Malaysian. The first issue from the U.S. is now translated into Spanish. So there's both an English and a Spanish version. And the next issue, which will be released, which is all on the work I did on immigration detention in Mexico, that will be coming out in the next few weeks in both a bilingual edition as well.
That's excellent. That's
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Monica, what about yourself? Yeah. People want to catch up on what you're up to. Where can they go to?
Yes. My website, monicalozano.com. That is where I have the series that I've created and that I'm still working on. It's ongoing work, and I will be publishing about this next book that I'm planning on doing. So yes, very exciting. And congratulations, Greg, on your work. I really admire what you're doing, and I've been nodding my head, agreeing with you with all that you've been.
No, the feelings are totally mutual, Monica. Yeah, I really love your work as well. It's just fantastic. It's so intimate and powerful, and really takes people into a different kind of perspective of the human experience for people on the border. So I just keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, John and Alan, for the invite.
Thank you for
so
joining
much.
us.
Absolutely.
our listeners, you could find all of this information on our show notes. If you want to, we strongly suggest you follow up on all the work from Greg Constantine and Monica Lozano. Their work is very powerful, very personal, and very real. This is not pompous nonsense. This is not fluff. These are real photographs of real situations. And both of these photographers do an excellent job of showing us exactly what's going on. Thank you both, and keep up all the good work.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Alan.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
If you are not a subscriber to our show, it's real easy. All you have to do is head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and just write B&H Photography, and boom, you're going to be right there. Sign up, and you will not miss a single episode. All of that said, on behalf of John and Jason, thank you so much for tuning in today. I didn't mention my own name, but that's okay. I know who I am. Bada bum.